Andre Dawson, the Hawk, Hall of Famer, 2000, I believe 10, went into Baseball Hall of Fame, and has now come out 13 years later asking the Baseball Hall of Fame to change the cap logo on his plaque from a Montreal Expos logo to a Chicago Cubs logo. And Howie, as you and I have talked off air, it's not a huge story in the sports world, but after reading some articles and seeing Dawson's comments, I wanted to talk about just how the Hall of Fame process works, how the players or managers don't really have a say, and just, as an Expo fan, originally I'm like, really? Like, come on. But then when I read Dawson's comments, I get it. It's a personal choice. And in this case, it sounds like he didn't really have one.
Well, since 2001, the Hall of Fame has dictated what cap is going to be represented on the plaque. As you said in a previous show, Gary Carter wanted to go in with a Mets cap, and the Hall said, no, you're going in with an Expos cap. And he didn't have a choice in that. In 2010, when Dawson went in, he wanted to be represented in a Cubs cap. And he was told at the time, no. I read an article this morning from The Athletic, a guy named Patrick Mooney, no relation, but he's in Chicago. And according to him, the Hall of Fame is now entertaining Dawson's request, but they're in the middle of their selection for the contemporary players era, which will pick, I think it's 3 out of 8 in the 8 people that they have. Cito Gaston being one of them, Lou Piniella. We've talked about this before, and they are in the middle of that, so they aren't going to get to Andre Dawson's request until next week. But I mean, they are going to entertain it.
Well, it's fascinating because here's what I found interesting with the Hall of Fame process. So as of 2001, the Hall of Fame said that players did not have any input in what logo goes on their plaque. And the reason for that were rumors that some legendary players were using it as part of contract negotiations, which is fascinating to me. It was fueled by Wade Boggs, but Boggs has denied it. In 2017 said, and someone probably misconstrued that I said that Mr. Vincent Naomi offered me $1 million to be the first Devil Ray to go into the Hall of Fame, and that conversation never took place. There were also rumors that Jose Canseco, who is not in the Hall of Fame, but at the time could have been considered a borderline Hall of Famer, also was part of these rumors that he had it in a negotiation that he would go in potentially as a Devil Ray. So it's interesting from that standpoint. When I talked about the Gary Carter, I remember his reasoning, and Dawson alluded to that as well in an interview with the Chicago Tribune, where it's a defunct franchise. We know it. Essentially, Montreal is a defunct franchise, although it's in Washington. But the history of when he played, of course, in Montreal, as you and I keep it alive, to those who played there, it's past. It's gone. Carter had great success in New York, won a World Series. Andre Dawson, MVP in 1987, had great success as a Cub. Again, with Dawson, there were a lot of issues in terms of with management and contracts, and he was part of that group of players that were colluded against, and that was proven in court. So that did not sit easy. And then when he went to Chicago, he actually had to take a massive pay cut because of this, what was going on in baseball and the economics of baseball at that time.
Well, he handed the Cubs a blank contract and said, you put a number in there.
Right.
And they put in $500,000.
Which really, when you think about it, was lowball considering his success in Montreal, winning Gold Gloves, winning Silver Sluggers, was Rookie of the Year. finished second in MVP voting, and a couple of times with the Expos. And, he always felt that Chicago rejuvenated his career or gave him a new, I don't know, purpose moving forward. And he said in the Tribune article that he's actually been very upset about this for a long time. And he felt that, as he's getting older, he's approaching, I think, 70 this year, that, it was time that he asked the Hall of Fame to change it.
In the Athletic piece, he says, look, do you think I care? I'm 70 years old now. I don't care. And it's funny to me because going through social media yesterday, there's a lot of anger, I think, among Canadians and among Expos fans. I know personally, I loved Andre Dawson. He was my favorite player. But yeah, he did have six gold gloves in Montreal, 4 silver sluggers. He was an all-star 3 times, MVP runner-up twice. But in 6 years in Chicago, he was an all-star 5 times. He was MVP. He won 2 more gold gloves there, and he won a silver slugger in Chicago as well. So, he felt more, I guess, more from the fans in Chicago, more from everybody in Chicago in terms of adulation than he did in Montreal in the 11 seasons or 12 seasons that he was there. And I guess really it's hard to argue with him when it's his choice. I'm always going to have my Andre Dawson jersey. It's not going to leave me. I'm always going to be an Andre Dawson fan. I'm always going to wear it to Blue Jays games because people will say, "What team is that?" And I don't care. I'm always going to wear my Andre Dawson jersey. I have a great picture somewhere where my son's wearing his Tim Raines jersey. I'm wearing my Dawson jersey, and we met up with this group from Quebec City, and one of the guys has his Carter jersey, and we're in that WestJet flight deck above center field. So I got a picture of the 3 of us with our backs to the camera looking out at the field, and behind us, you can see all of Rogers Center and the field and everything behind us. And it's a really great picture. And to me, that will mean more to me as an Expos fan than whether or not Andre Dawson is pictured with an Expos hat or a Cubs hat.
I completely agree with what you said, but come from an Expo perspective. And when I say an Expo perspective, you and I are huge Expo fans. I got my Carter jersey. But think of the fans who have been kicked down, who lost a franchise in their city. We've talked about it every show, it feels like, but it still hurts. It will always hurt.
Of course it does.
And here's just another, yesterday, I think in some of the message boards, and again, it depends on who you follow and what everybody's entitled to their opinion, whether they're right or wrong. But, a lot of Expo fans were like, I cannot believe this is happening. Another sort of kick at us. And he was adamant. He's like, this had nothing to do with the people of Montreal. This had nothing to do, he loved his playing time there, but this was a personal choice that he didn't get to make. And it's bothered him ever since. And, I'll be honest. I think Gary Carter was pressured to have an Expo logo, even though I think deep down, based on winning that 86 World Series and how special that team was to him, and he was a big part of that. That would be a difficult decision to not have that decision, or even discuss it. I think that's what really has sort of opened my eyes to the process. Now, I was actually reading, Howie, that this has happened a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Maddux and Tony La Russa, who have managed and played for various teams, they don't even have a logo on their caps.
Right. And Greg Maddux said he was fine with that because he spent his time in Chicago meant as much to him as his time in Atlanta. And his time in Chicago basically set him up as a player to be able to do what he did in Atlanta.
But I believe the Hall of Fame wanted him to go in as a Brave, and he said, no, I'm just as much of a Cub. So then they decided they're not going to do an emblem.
That's interesting that they gave in to him, but they didn't give in to
Well,
Carter
I don't
or
know if they
Dawson.
actually gave in to him. It well, let's be honest, that would have caused quite a stir as well, right? At the
Sure,
time. I don't even
sure.
remember that discussion happening, but reading the articles, similar
Yeah.
to LaRussa had great success everywhere he went. So, that's almost like picking one kid over another in terms of where you've won your championships and how important you were to certain franchises. And Tony La Russa was very important to many franchises over his career. There is actually a third one, and now the one escapes me,
It wasn't
unfortunately.
Gaylord Perry, was it?
I don't think so. No.
Because Gaylord
Yeah.
Perry had he had a hat with about 45 different logos on it.
Could you imagine what his den would have looked like with
Oh,
if everybody kept their jerseys?
yeah.
But getting back to Dawson, I it's funny you said, according to the article I saw yesterday, they haven't even responded to him yet in terms of his request, and he knows it's a bit of a long shot right now, but to put it out in the public and in the press the way it happened yesterday, I just thought it was something we couldn't ignore just because we are so attached to the Expos and that logo. But it was an interesting and fascinating perspective on how the Hall of Fame actually works a little bit that I didn't realize this. And quite honestly, I think it's ridiculous that they choose when it's the player who played that career. I think that's wrong.
Well, I think part of it is what you said earlier. It's possible monetization of the logo on the cap in the Hall of Fame by a player in a contract negotiation, and that wouldn't surprise me one iota.
Going to the Hall of Fame with you in 2014, which was a huge bucket list moment for me growing up. I had always wanted to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and we got to do it together, which was a fantastic day, and I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. But there is a pride thing when you see your favorite player or players wear that hat on that plaque. As a fan, it does something to you. Like there's a pride uh, issue that goes along with it. I felt it when I saw Dawson's plaque, when I saw Carter's plaque. I had a huge warm heart when I saw those plaques because those were our guys. Those were my
Yeah.
heroes growing up. And to see them in this unbelievable Hall of Fame, uh, it was actually a pretty emotional time.
Anytime you have an emotional connection with something, whether it be a person, whether it be a team, whether it be just a time in your life, where you got to enjoy. I remember the first time I went to a football game at Lansdowne Park, and I was overwhelmed by the colors and the sights and those plastic horns and the smell of cigars in the air, because back then everybody could smoke still. And I said that to a legendary Ottawa writer, Earl McRae, one time. I said, when I was going through everything, I said, the smell of cigars. He says, oh my God, yeah, the smell of cigars. My grandfather used to smoke these cigars, and I mean that smell, it brings me back to that time. And it was a wonderful, simpler time. I think I was 9 years old, and it was 1969. But anyway, there is an emotional and a visceral feeling seeing that plaque of your favorite player in the Hall of Fame, whether it's the Baseball Hall of Fame or the Football Hall of Fame in Canton, or hockey, or whatever Hall of Fame you've been to. Seeing something brings back memories and brings back feelings that can be wonderful.
You know what I really would love, Howie? I'd love 6 months of the year in an Expo cap, 6 months in a year in a Cubs cap, and everybody be happy.
They get the guys to come in with the drill, take the plaque off, put the other plaque on with the other hat on.
I would be fascinated to find out how much a plaque actually costs to make.
God, yeah, really.
That could be our salaries together.
There you go.
All right. That's a perfect way to end this edition, a shorter edition of the Sports Lunatics. Again, don't forget to check us out on YouTube. Again, don't forget, we are now on Apple Podcasts, the Sports Lunatics. We are also on multiple platforms. we will have it listed on the sportslunatics.com so you can check out the show audio wise or video wise on YouTube. Howie, before we go, quickly about your book. It's that time of year again, pre and post Christmas time. Thoughts? People have money to burn. And I tell you, I hope it goes into your pocket for more crazy days and wild nights.
It's Christmas time. Boom, boom. There's no need to be afraid. Now, I'm happy. My book is coming. My book is out. It's been out for about a month. More Crazy Days and Wild Nights. It's the follow-up to Crazy Days and Wild Nights, which came out back in the end of February. More stories, crazy, wild stories, outlandish stories about things that have happened in sports, things that are not planned for, but yet once they happen, the people involved have to deal with the consequences of chance. And they could be things that happen in a second, in a minute, over a period of hours. But you've got a situation where a WHA player was arrested during a game where he tried to hide from the cops in the stick room of the other team. They eventually caught him, found him trying to disguise himself as a stack of PMPs, but they got him. There's a story about Boom Boom Mancini and Duk Koo Kim, where Kim is taken away in a coma, and Mancini and Kim's family have to deal with that for the rest of their lives. There's a story, little stories at the end of 6 guys we lost in 2022 in a short window of time. Guy Lafleur being one of them, and how he met Phil Collins in the bowels of the Montreal Forum one time. Anyway, little stories like that, but stories where people have to deal with certain things that happen in their lives that could affect their career, could affect their life, could affect a whole bunch of other people as well. You can get the book on Amazon, and I hope you love it. I was talking to a friend today. She bought 2 copies, or a copy of each book, for her cousin for Christmas. It's things like that. Christmas is coming. Get the book for yourself. Get the book for a sports fan in your life.
Wonderful. And you can check it out on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. I'm Shawn Lavigne in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Howie Mooney in Barrie, Ontario.
Have a great sports day, everybody.